There we go. We are recording officially. So welcome everyone to a little lunchtime engagement with the North Carolina Museum of Art. I'm thrilled that Morgan has put this together for you all, and I'm happy to be here and share some of the resources that the North Carolina Museum of Art offers to all kinds of audiences, because I hear we have some students and teachers in here, so this is great. And this is designed just for you all specifically. So we'll talk a lot about some of the stuff from the North Carolina Museum of Art, but then have some resources for you at the end from your library system as well. So I'd like to just quickly open up with a little get to know you, not a deep one. If you could put your name in the chat, where you live, and if you have a favorite museum memory. This could be from any point in your life. It might have been a third grade field trip you took, or it might have been something you did recently. So put your name, where you live, and a favorite museum memory in the chat, just as a little warm up to get our brains going in this direction. Oh, lovely. I've not been to Spain. Very jealous of you. Thanks, Michelle. Oh, great. Again, another place I've yet to visit. I have not been to Old Salem, and that's horrible for a museum person. Durham, great for VMFA, such a beautiful place. Yeah, they have great exhibits. Oh, what? Married at the North Carolina Museum of Art. What year was that, Christy? 2013. Ugh, that's so cool. I always walk through weddings and events that are going on. Well, no, they're not happening right now, but they're so amazing. Lots of photography around the museum grounds, though. Lots of people show up in their wedding dresses. Oh, I love the Denver Museum. That's a great show. That's great. Oh, real life painting, right? You're like, what? So we are in a virtual space right now. And so we won't get the full experience of, I wish we could all be together in the museum. Oh, the Mint Museum is fantastic. They have such a good, yeah, I love, what's his name? What's his first name? All of a sudden, I can't remember. Yeah, his paintings are amazing. Scott Avett, that's right. Okay, these are great. So we have some pretty active museum goers that have been around the world, but have also taken advantage of some of the amazing museums we have in North Carolina. We have a huge range of amazing spaces to visit, and places, not even indoor, but outdoor in North Carolina, to look at history and to look at art. And our science museums as well are incredible. The Guggenheim, yes. Oh yes, the Guggenheim, such a beautiful building too. So thank you for sharing that. So it seems like some of you are familiar with the North Carolina Museum of Art. We are in Raleigh, North Carolina, right near the fairgrounds. We are open to the public at the moment, just no big events are happening. There have been some outdoor events, which have been amazing. And if you've never been to one of our concerts or our films, they are extraordinarily fun because the museum setting is so intimate. But there's a 164-acre campus, there's 2 buildings. Ongoing changes and exhibitions. So it's so close to all of us. So if you need to entertain yourself and enrich your soul, please come visit. And we'll go over a little bit about some of the programs that are available right now. But we are here today to just think about visual literacy for a short period of time and think about what the definition of visual literacy is, and think about what it means to be visually literate. What are the skills that are part of visual literacy, and then how do we apply that to the work that we do in our courses, but also just in our lives? How does visual literacy impact the way that we see the world and interpret things? And you're going to be thinking about how those areas apply to your coursework and to your lives. And then we'll also be, like I said, sharing a few more resources of how you might extend this type of learning with the museum, either just for yourself personally, personal enrichment, lifelong learning, or if you want to bring more of this into your coursework, either as a student or a teacher. So hopefully we'll inspire you in lots of ways today. So let's just do a little check-in. How's everyone feeling? These are all works of art from the collection. I'd love for you to think about it, look at them all. Number one, this is a Mickalene Thomas. Feeling great, feeling alive, ready to go. Number two, you're like a Monet. You're feeling nice, relaxed. Life is calm, good. Are you feeling like a Beverly McKeever? Truly grateful, it's the title of this painting. Feeling like very blessed for the things that are happening in your life right now. Are you a Rodin? Deep in thought. Are you number five, Bill Viola? Kind of all over the place today. All my emotions are happening at once. Or are you like the Dutch painter Ludolf Backhuizen, and you are a ship on a stormy sea and you're really struggling? So if you could put the number of the work of art that you matches the way you are feeling, that would be great. We'll get a sense of how everyone's doing. Generally a 5 every day. Good, some truly gratefuls between 5 and 6. Oh, Michelle's feeling super positive. Great. Yeah, I'm literally a 5 every day as well too. Arlene, I'm guessing that's a 1. She's feeling Mickalene. It's great. So these all are works of art that are pretty much always up at the museum. So if you wanted to go see them in person, this is also just a great way to warm up a class and use a work of art in a way. So it's our first dipping of our toe into a way that you might use visual literacy with students to help, or yourself to think about just a check-in. How am I feeling? How does this work of art reflect how I'm feeling? So thank you for sharing. So let's think about this definition of visual literacy. And just in the chat box, if you could add any words or phrases that initially, I'm not asking you necessarily to define it, but what are some words or phrases that come to mind when you hear the words visual literacy? Throw those into chat. Comprehension, images, appreciation, understanding. Being able to articulate what I see, also being able to do what we just did, right? Being able to look at something and make some connections, being able to understand what you see. These are all great. These are all, I would say, yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, because all of these are part of visual literacy. So yes. Let's think of a super simple, this is the easiest definition that I like to use. I do most of my work. I didn't introduce myself, did I? I'm Kristen Smith. I work at the North Carolina Museum of Art. Let's backtrack to the first slide. And I work primarily with teachers. And so this is a definition that I use with teachers across the state, K through 12, when we're looking at visual literacy. So visual literacy teaches a set of competencies that help us think through, think about, and think with pictures, images. So think through, think about, and think with pictures. So there's a lot of skills that we're practicing when you're thinking through, thinking about, and thinking with. But even more than that is this big giant diagram that I love so much, of all those capacities, all this web work of what our mind is doing when we're practicing and developing visual literacy. So what we just did, we just interpreted and analyzed some images. So when you come to a museum, that's usually what you're doing, is you're just looking at works of art, you're finding connections, you may do that in your classes. Another level would be you're evaluating those images. At what level are they effective or not effective? Are they good or bad? Do we even use those terms? But how do we evaluate an image for its truth, its accuracy, its connection to history? How are we using images in our work? Are they effectively sending the message that we want, connecting to the audience that we want to speak to? How are we creating visual media? On the simplest level of putting on a post on social media, you are using visual literacy every single time you post to social media. You're thinking about your audience, how it's impacting them, how people are connecting to your story, what you have to say. Is it visually moving, emotionally moving? So all of this web is part of visual literacy. And you can see when you look at this web that it likely connects with so many parts of your life, not even just the research that you do in your courses, but also in the ways that you're communicating in the world. And that is one of the things that I really want us to connect to within this. But I love this definition. Philip Yenawine is a leading thought person, researcher, writer in the world of visual literacy. And he and another social scientist came up with the visual thinking strategies we'll use a little bit later. But I love some of the language that he uses in his definition about, and some of you put this in the chat, but this idea of associating, questioning, speculating, analyzing, fact-finding, categorizing, and that it's not always just that objective part of figuring out images, but also the subjective, like how does it make us feel and how does that feeling connect to our understanding as well. So it's very complex, the science of visual literacy and the way that you teach it and understand it. Again, we're just dabbling in this hour. So there's many other places you can find more about this. So I'm going to take you all through some strategies today that help us practice and develop our visual literacy. But also help us define it even more and think about the connections we can make to our own work. So we're going to actively engage in some visual literacy strategies, but then also think about how it connects to the work that we do. And specifically, we'll start off with reading. And so I do this a ton with teachers and students that are in classes, is how is a work of art or any image the same as any text that you might read? How might you look at a work of art for the same kind of information that you might look for in a traditional text of either an article or a book passage? How are we reading that work of art to try and get the same kinds of information that will help us understand something more, help reveal new perspectives, or to make connections to the other key ideas that we're looking for. So we'll start with this work of art, and just for about 15 seconds, I want you just to look at the image and try to notice as many details as you can, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So about 15 seconds, just look. And in the chat, I'd like you to write one or two things that you see. The first things you saw that popped into your your line of sight when you were looking at this work of art, and put those in the chat. And no answer is too simple. The field in the back. Oh, so near his garden and truck. Field in the back with Jesus spelled out, a lot of greenery. The truck, the fence, Jesus, grass, trampoline. Oh, there is. Thank you for that. What is on the truck? Obvious truck, the farm setting, the Jesus image. Farmhouse, white picket fence, truck with artwork all over it, Jesus in the field, small garden in the foreground. Good. Anything else someone's seen that hasn't been mentioned that you want to point out? Where's the trampoline? Isn't my pointer working? Yeah, I'd never noticed that myself, which made me look a little bit further even. I think that's a chicken coop. Maybe. So anything else that you notice that hasn't been mentioned? Okay, so the next, oh, the sheds, yes. And there's home garden, yeah. Great, so let's think about now, what does this work make you think about? What connections to other things are you thinking about as you look at this work of art? This could be a memory. It could be a song, a book you've read, a place you've been. What are the things that this work of art makes you think about? Think there are animals somewhere on the farm, the South. I live on a farm, so the first thing I think about is comparing the way the garden farm is. That's so funny. like walking into someone's home. Rural life, hardworking people living off the land. The South, conservative, why can't I say the word? Conservatism, conservative thinking, conservative ways of, yeah. It's a hard word to say. Hunting. Great. Okay, so good connections that we're making to who lives there? What is the main reason someone will put Jesus? Oh, okay, so this is the next one. Good, you're already jumping to that. So what are some questions we have now about the work? So we're making connections to things beyond the work, to our own lives, to the world. So now what questions do we have that make us even more curious about the subject or the artist? So these are great questions. Who lives there? What is the main reason someone would put the Jesus image there into their field of crops? That's a great question. So what other wonder questions do we have? What are they farming? What kind of plants are in the field? How are they using the land? What are they growing there? Who tends the farm? What animals live there? What are all the different buildings? Why is there a sort of lawn there by the truck? So why, what kind of truck is that? Is the farm their main source of income, or do they have to work elsewhere to survive? How close is the nearest neighbor? These are such great questions. So some of these questions, let's think about, if you were in a museum, where might you find some of the answers to these questions? Why would anyone put religious figure boldly in their field? So where might we find some of the answers in, if you were at a museum, to this? Right, so the text label, or you ask a guide in the museum, or sometimes even, I love this, Wilma's digging even deeper about the disconnect between the tidiness of the setting, right, audio, and the truck and the Jesus image. Audio tour if available. Also online, there's often in museums QR codes or information online. So we actually have, you do, thank you, Wilma. I appreciate you being here. Good artist background, right? So here we have a website for the museum that gives us a bit more information, but we would have to dig further because some of your questions would not be answered from this text label because it's a very simple text label. And this is not a text label. This is just from the museum's website. So we know now the artist is Burke Guzzle, which we saw before. We know the title is Cami Truck with Jesus. So it's all camouflage design, but black and yellow, which doesn't seem terribly camouflagey. And what I know of, and I don't know a whole bunch about this work of art, we'd have to dig in even deeper, is that Burke Guzzle lives in Wilson, North Carolina. He's been a photographer since he was in his teens, and he's been in Life magazine, he's been in tons of magazines documenting America, and he's really in love with rural America, and he documents all cultures, all places, and he does it with no judgment, and he's just an observer. He wants to document the world as it is in the moment in time. So in 2009, this is in Virginia. I don't know exactly where, rural Appalachia we know, so it's somewhere near the mountains in that area. But he has documented this moment, this scene, this place. And I think all the questions you have about it are probably the same ones he had, which made it interesting to him to want to document. What is this place? Who lives here? What are all these parts and pieces, and how do they relate to each other? And how do we dig more into this place and these people and why it exists as it is? So many interesting questions to consider. And so I wanted to start off with See, Think, Wonder. That's the strategy that we just used. What do you see? What does it make you think about? What does it make you wonder? Because it's a real easy entry point into just looking at works of art. What do we see? What's it make me think about? What's it make me wonder? And then you can walk away, or you can have curiosity driven deep into the ground and you just go for it. And you find out more about Burke Guzzle, you find out more about rural Appalachia, you find out more about photography. So I love this strategy as a means for anyone beginning to look at art or beginning to think about visual literacy. I can look at something, I don't have to fully understand it, but I can try and observe and make some connections and then either go further or move on. Great, so Wilma's already into it. She likes Burke Guzzle. So we're going to go a little bit deeper now into the next strategy, but I want you to think about how that strategy in itself could be used in your coursework, in your classes, if you're beginning research with a work of art as a means to connect to content that you're trying to write about or share with others. What do you see? What's it make you think about? What's it make you wonder? All right, so here we are looking at another work in the collection. And so for this work of art, I'm going to start with a different question. So that's not what do you see, but let's go a little bit bigger and broader and say what's going on in this picture. So look at the work of art from the top to the bottom, to the left, to the right. Look at all those same, be as observant as possible, make those connections. You might go through that see, think, wonder process, but now we're kind of going to the place of storytelling. What's going on in this picture? And also, what do you see that makes you say that? So if you could, I would love if you want to unmute, you're welcome. If you don't want to type a bunch in chat, you can unmute and tell me what you think is going on in the picture, or write it in chat, what's going on in this picture. All right, so Harley says they may be trying to move and beat the storm. Let me ask you, Harley, to be specific in that. What do you see in the work that makes you think that they're trying to move? All right, Michelle's kind of backing that up. Moving valuable possessions out of the house before it's destroyed, saving household goods during the storm with flooding. Did someone unmute for a second?
I did. Wilma.
Wilma, thanks. Do you want to share what you think's going on?
I was thinking maybe they were moving from somewhere to here looks like he's maybe taking it out of the truck, but now I see the other person putting the stuff back, helping him put the stuff in the wagon. So I'm changing my mind about moving in versus moving out.
Okay, so but that is a point of consideration. Are they moving in? Are they moving
Yeah.
out? There is a storm. At what point are we in the storm?
Yeah. The house in the background looks like it's got water around it almost.
Right?
Yeah.
So Wilma's noticing this house in the background that looks as though it's already submerged underwater.
They're expecting more. Right. Yeah. So they're moving out.
Right, so it looks like they are trying to load things into the carriage.
Mhm.
What else do you notice?
That shed on the right and the big basket or pot there makes me think this is another farm setting. Some sort of agriculture going on there too.
Okay. So Wilma's noticing that we're in another rural area, or in a place where there's a land and nature and weather. Well, I guess that's kind of a concern everywhere, whether you're rural or urban. But Arlene is also noticing there are no women shown in this work of art. What else do you notice?
The ruddy sand, like the ground that they're on, it looks mucky and muddy and like untenable, or
Yeah, Wilma's noticing that the ground is possibly extremely saturated, and so there's a big buildup of gooey, ooey mud that you're maybe imagining how you said untenable, like how it's going to be to get through it with the mules that Christy noticed and the wagon that others have mentioned. Barbara's noticing that some items have been tossed to the side in a hurry to leave. So we see this pitcher that's fallen out and maybe the haphazardness of putting things into the wagon. Lauren, yes.
I also noticed in the background that in addition to the house being flooded, it looks like that water is pretty close to them with all of the muckiness. So it's sort of interesting to me that the horses are faced that way instead of the opposite direction. And because that's uphill versus them being able to go downhill, because it looks like based on the tires, it may have already been moving. And so I'm thinking, how are they going to get out of there?
Great observation. So Laura's noticing that there's sort of this, the artist has created almost a feeling of like being trapped. And how am I going to get out of this? Because the water's come up, there's this mud, there's a hill. Can they turn in this direction to go around? But in some ways, creating a little heightened feeling around them being able to get out. Oh, okay. So Arlene has a different idea about the pitcher and the large pan that they might have been used to bail out water to clear some space. What else do you notice about this? This right here? Harley, is this? Yes. Anyone want to take a guess what this might be? Yeah, right? I can't even imagine fitting that into a wagon. Oh, good. Wait, let me come back up to this chat. There was some good stuff from, let me pull my chat open a little bit more. Oh, it went too quick. There we go. Yes, so Michelle and Amanda are noticing some interesting things in the sky that have to do with sort of time, but also feeling. And so is the storm approaching, or is it multiple times all in one? But then also that blue sky, what could it mean? Is it metaphorical within the painting that there's a sign of clearing or a sign of hope? Is the artist including multiple ideas in this? So let's move on to the next part. I'm going to sum up, unless does anyone else have one more thing they want to add? Yes, the strange character in pink. Students always think that's grandma for some reason. All the movement is to the right, bringing in the storm. Great. All right, so we've talked a lot about some of the ways that the artist has composed the image to give a feeling of tenseness and rush and hurry, but also feeling trapped. So there's a lot of sort of drama in this work of art. We've talked about where this place might be, as far as rural, near water that floods, that there's an impending storm that's either coming through continually or leaving or coming again. We're not really sure of the time of it. And that these two individuals are in the process of trying to save their most precious items. So let's move on to, so this is this right here, what we just did is called visual thinking strategies. And that it's sounds more technical than it really is. But there is a lot of science behind what we just did. And it's the way our brains work and the way we want to understand things. So we as human beings love stories. We want to immediately make connections, and we want to really start to understand things through those connections. So by asking the question, what's going on in this picture, you are immediately asking everyone to engage their own experiences. Where have I seen this? What do I connect it to? We didn't have to break it up as see, think, wonder. And then we just keep asking, well, what more do you see? I mean, we could spend a while on this work of art if we wanted to, because there are some things we didn't talk about, like when do you think this takes place? Where specifically might it be? So there are more things to uncover that we haven't uncovered yet, but it's such a great strategy for making us talk specifically, connect the story with the things we see in the work of art. So when you think about research also, that idea of I have an idea, but I need to support that idea with key details from the topic that I'm exploring, from the time period that I'm exploring. How do I support the questions that I've been asking? How do I show what I'm trying to tell? So this strategy is such a great analogy for doing good research and presenting good research. But we're going to try and do that even a little bit more. So I'm now going to give you some context around this work of art, and it will absolutely reinforce so many of the observations that we just made. So go ahead and read this. This would be the text label. And I want you in the chat to comment on where does this text label reinforce what we saw, or what new ideas or perspectives did you gain in reading this passage? So either what was affirmed, or what new ideas? Yes. So it seems like he is it's a reimagination of what the people encountered. So he's really wanting this. This isn't like the actual event, like he went and took a photograph and that's what was happening. He's really trying, he's really trying to get that message across of that symbolic struggle. So how do I create an image that shows the struggle, the fear, the challenges of living? Which I think is such a great metaphor in general for life, right? Yeah, so reinforce the flooded area, the moving, poor roads, Yes, the emergency in it was affirmed, that struggle. You can feel how rushed they are. But also this idea of bringing to life real events in a way that makes it even more powerful. Great, right? Oh, yes, I love that. I think it shows that while the type of transportation may have changed, how it can still be relevant today, right? So these are so many things in this work of art may not be used as frequently by people. There are definitely places that still use horses and carriages, but less frequently. So that struggle then is real, but the feeling of what it means to have to pick up and leave. I mean, North Carolinians know this with hurricanes, know this with ice storms, know this with all kinds of natural events that occur, and other things that make us have to pick up and leave, things that make us have to leave our homes and move to other places that are out of our control. So there's some really big themes that Benton is exploring in this simple event that he's captured that connect more to the struggle of what it is to be human. So I think we made so many of those wonderful connections just in our initial viewing. But now that we've even read more, we've done more research, made more connections, now we're even more eager to have more questions answered. Struggle is indeed timeless. Yes. All right, so let's think about concepts is something that the museum uses a ton in thinking of these universal themes that, I mean, art is endless and its exploration of human existence and the big themes of what it means to be alive and beyond. And so let's think about some concepts or themes that Benton is exploring. So one I think we already said was struggle. Are there any other themes or concepts that you think Benton is exploring through this work of art? Survival, perseverance, fear, community. Rural life, power of nature. Excellent. Art, I think, has this ability, because it is visual and because we respond so viscerally and quickly to the visual world that we live in, these themes sometimes come out even a little bit easier when you're using an image. So these are great themes. Let's dig even a little bit more. And I will choose a theme for you, storytelling. And I want us to think about how we might even narrow those themes down even more within this work of art. If we wanted to explore a specific topic within the theme of storytelling. So what topic might be explored to tell a story connected to the work of art through one of these? So what I want you to try and do is, if you're choosing history as a lens, what topic might you be telling the story about through this work of art? Science is what do we see in this work of art that you could tell a story about through the sciences? Geography, what might be? So drop those into chat, some topics that might be explored in one of these subject areas using this work of art. You don't have to answer all of them. Just choose one subject area. Climate science, amazing. Life on a floodplain, amazing. The human spirit, this in conjunction with other works of art that show some of those themes of perseverance and struggle, and you were to share a story about the human spirit, I love it. Survival pre-technical advancement, right? This is how they did it. This is what we can learn from that. But I love the idea of survival. Yes, this would be an interesting comparison to a more modern day disaster like Hurricane Katrina. And I love that. I love that comparison piece of then and now and what it looks like in the newspapers and how quickly things get shared, and trying to make that comparison between the two events. Communities and cities versus rural areas. What builds community in those, looking for how they are similar, but then how they are different. I love that question. People's relationships with historical patterns. Ooh, that's a deep one. I like that, Wilma. Excellent. So we can see that through one work of art, we've now developed numerous research topics to allow us to, and no one said Benton biography. You could do I mean, he's fascinating, the way that he shaped the view of American culture. And he's an interesting one to compare to Burke Uzzell, because both of them are thinking about what the American landscape looks like and how that reflects culture and humanity. So that's an interesting biographical comparison that you might do. Life in the South during the 40s. Whew, yes. Great. Let's move forward. This is a beautiful exercise that Miss Morgan Pruitt did for the visual literacy course that the museum offers, which she took, and which is the connection that was made to bring this exercise to you all. Eudora Welty, photographer, that has a collection of, again, I don't think we meant to focus on rural life, but it weirdly has in all of the works of art that we chose. And this is a breakdown of, again, multiple concepts that you might dig down into to find topics that you might explore. So whether it's storytelling, identity, perspective, but then I love some of the questions developed around the topic at hand. Where's the argument hidden in the photograph? What is there to say? What are the key words? Again, developing that idea of being deeper observers, digging into that research and really developing an idea by spending time with something and developing more questions around it. So thanks, Amy, for giving the shout out to Morgan. It's really impressive. All right, so let's do a little recap. This is from, I'm borrowing and I'm giving credit to the Toledo Museum of Art, that did amazing work on visual literacy as a focus for their work. And I want you, as you watch this video, to think again about how visual literacy connects to the work that you do, either as a student or as an educator, or as a human being within your world outside of school. And we'll make some connections at the end. So thumbs up if you can hear this.
Visual literacy to me is about taking a step back, slowing down, looking closer, deconstructing whatever's in front of you so that you can understand it, so that you can better put it back together.
Visual literacy to me is when I look at something, a scene, a picture, and how I interpret that within the context of my own personality.
Visual literacy is a way of experiencing the world beyond what we see with our eyes. It's a way of taking in all of the visual stimulation that we're receiving today.
Visual literacy to me is understanding form, shape, color, and understanding the context which it's used.
I guess I would define visual literacy as taking the images that you see on a day-to-day basis, or finding images that you see to combine with text and allowing that to enhance your learning.
Visual literacy for me is life, is living in the here and now, and understanding what's going on around me.
To me, visual literacy is being able to draw meaning from different visual cues in society and being able to, specifically in my class, create pieces of writing from the meaning that we get in the images.
Visual literacy involves the skills of both being able to access information and the visual narrative from any kind of image, as well as to able to design an image that has a visual narrative.
Everything really is an image, right? And so it's this idea that we can intake this information and then make sense of this information.
Visual literacy to me is really spending time with objects, with a painting or a sculpture, and looking in depth at those objects and developing personal meaning from them.
Visual literacy is really about this whole process, right? The process of where do I start? How do I unfold? How do I package? How do I repackage? And then how do I?
Awesome. So let's think about, whoops, move forward. Stop. Why isn't it moving forward? Oh, you know what? I think it's on a multiple. There we go. Okay. So let's just make a few connections to our own roles. So especially with the library. So considering the skills you need to do good research, how does developing your own visual literacy help you to be a better researcher or help students to be better at research? We could drop a few of those in the chat, or if you want to say them out loud too. Right. So I think it helps to create and identify those different lenses that you can see a topic through. There's not just one way. Yes, being curious, asking questions, letting a question lead to another question. I love what Barbara's saying. It really is important about developing the skills of looking at more details. Often we do not, and I see this with when I was a high school teacher, slowing down, being specific, looking at details is so important. Oh, I love that, Michelle. So really pushing some ways of creative thinking around a question. So not focusing, not digging that analysis hole so deep that you kind of lose sight of what you were trying to go for in the beginning. So connecting back to how does this make us feel? How does this change the perspective, that thinking about audience and self in that? So it's not so much about facts and logic. Great. Love it. So connections too about developing syllabi that really incorporates this to help students recognize the sort of metacognitive of why we do visual literacy. Here's why you should do it. Here's why it would be helpful. But then also I love the idea of a shortcut to understanding. It is, like we said, it's very visceral. It's right there. So before I go into some program stuff around the museum, do you all have any questions specific to visual literacy, specific to any of the works of art, things we do with teachers, things that how visual literacy could be brought more? Any questions from the group? I always wait because it takes a while to type. Thanks, Amy. She's our hype person on the sidelines. Great. Thanks, Michelle. As a humanities instructor, where can I find resources? So one thing that I will share with you is the website. I need to move my, so this is NCMA Learn, that's specific for K-12 educators, but I think it goes beyond that. But I think one thing would be in lesson plans. One way to think about it. Okay, so first I would say works of art. If you go to NCMA Learn, you can keyword search. We've tried to tag as much, we're certainly not a Google, but we've tried to tag works of art with specific, like we were saying, topics or themes or lenses or key ideas. So that might be one way. If you're looking for specific mediums, but then there's also specific cultures. So in humanities, if there's a specific culture you can dig into, but then also concepts. Lesson plans, you could go into English or social studies and see what's to offer there. Again, it's K-12, so you might get some ideas. It may not be, you might be able to adapt it to what you're doing. But then always looking at the programs. What did Morgan write? Yeah. Yeah. And then there might be, I think some of the videos about artists can be really amazing for the humanities as far as the big ideas. So it's going to take a little bit of digging to connect to whatever it is that you want to do. But I'm a good resource. I always, whenever I do one of these presentations, I say, please reach out to me and email me. I can connect you with a work of art or a person at the museum that might help with whatever it is that you're trying. Like it could be a quick email of like, I'm looking for a work of art about this period of time. So I can always help with that too. But the website's great. Our main website for the museum doesn't have as much collection details as NCMA Learn does. So this is your place to go to learn more about the art itself. Okay. So these are just some upcoming programs. We're in a shift. We just closed a big exhibition, Alphonse Mucha, which was a great exhibit, but that is closed now. So we've got some other great exhibits that are in between, but we have nothing in the big exhibition space that is not free. But then the whole museum itself is always there, and that is always free. Then I also have hyperlinked here classes and workshops that are coming up that are open to all levels of learners. So there's some studio workshops, there's some lectures. So, and then I also created a page here for college programs specifically. So there are internships for those that are enrolled in college, and there's all that you could be in education, public programming, curatorial, event planning. So there's all kinds of internships that you can, and they're usually a semester long. Then there's, I don't know if these are happening right now, these free Friday special exhibitions. And then there's Park Pictures, which allows college students to submit works of art for, yes, most of the classes and workshops are on Zoom right now. They might shift again. We shifted back to virtual during Omicron, and then we might be going back to in-person in the spring. I can't say for sure. So I'd always be watching. Whoops, went ahead. And then I'll hand this over to Morgan now to talk about this slide.
So I just wanted to let y'all know that we have created a visual literacy guide, and we're going to be putting all of our visual literacy activities and programs that we do this semester on there, but it is currently already got some ideas for how you could look at art. It's got the visual thinking strategies, and there is also a tab for how you can incorporate art more effectively into your classroom for instructors, and that's just labeled instructors, and you can click on that and explore. If you would like something that is that you can look at and that you can research more about, there are some keywords that you can try. And as you get more specific, we can always create more specific keywords. And if you're just like, I really want to sit down with someone and talk about this and research specifically about what we have here in the library, you can click that link or email me and make an appointment, and we will work together to find materials for your class, for you personally, for your research, whether you're a student or instructor. That is what we are here for, and we're excited about it.
Thanks. And we love the way Morgan's brain works, so you should sit with her because she's a big thinker. All right, here's my email. This is where you can email me if you have any resource questions. And come to the museum, visit, just go to the park if you want to be around art, but be outside, or you go inside, whatever you want to do. But we would love to have you there. I think that's my last slide, right? It is. All right. This has been fantastic. You all have been such an engaging group, and I hope that you've left here with some deeper understanding of what visual literacy can look like in your life or in your courses, and really help with your research, and that you feel a little bit more inspired after this hour and rejuvenated.